We'll celebrate 92 years that Dr. Martin Luther King would have been alive if he would have lived. But it seems like that the issues that we're still fighting today. But have they gotten worse? Also, we're just getting started with the insurrection and the aftermath. This is Save the Water, and I'm your host, award-winning Dr. Eric Claville. Stay tuned as we talk with representatives from the Urban League of Hampton Roads and also Brown, Virginia, about MLK Day, their events, and where do we go from here. And in the second half hour, we want to hear from you about the insurrection, the aftermath, and what do you think we can do to go from here. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Save the Water, and I'm your host, Dr. Eric Claville. We're so glad that you joined us this Sunday on the eve that we celebrate the birthday and also the life and the work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And we know that as African Americans, we've come so far, but we still have a long way to go. And to help us to discuss these various issues, we have with us two guests today. The first guest is Mr. Thomas Hasty, who is the chairman of the Urban League of Hampton Roads. Mr. Hasty, welcome to Save the Water.
Good afternoon.
So glad to have you here with us. Listen, we know the Urban League of Hampton Roads is an important part and important fabric of our community. You do so much work, important work. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about your role on the Urban League and what the Urban League is really all about?
Yeah. My role as chairman really is to call the meeting to order, help set some governance guidelines. We've got a tremendous staff. And without that staff, we could not accomplish things that we do accomplish. The mission of the Urban League of Hampton Roads is pretty simple. It's to enable African Americans and others to secure economic self-reliance, parity, power, and civil rights. And that sounds pretty simple, but all you need to do is look at last week, and those things are paramount in our lives now.
You know, Mr. Hasty, you mentioned just last week, and we've actually, the day of the insurrection, we were live on air giving up-to-date information to our listeners, which some didn't even know what was happening at the Capitol, and we were able to provide them information of what was going on. And we actually, our show last week and this week, we're talking about it and looking at the aftermath. But what about the last 4 years or the last 12 years, with the issues that we've dealt with as African Americans and the rise of white supremacy and hatred? How do you see the Urban League itself addressing or speaking to those issues?
Well, I think the Urban League plays a unique role because we try to be a bridge between all parties. Certainly, it's pretty clear who we fight for. We have a diverse board. Our sponsorship is pretty diverse. And I think that helps us in being able to get into boardrooms of corporations, explain our position, and to give the perspective, the African-American perspective, of how we see things. There are always going to be, the reds and the blues, Republicans and Democrats, independents, and there are people who are single-issue voters. But there's only one America.
That's right.
And what we try to do is make sure that we can improve that one America every day, one step at a time.
That's it. And you mentioned the boardrooms. A lot of our activism we see take place on the street, our marching and galvanizing the vote, which is very important. But the Urban League serves a unique role in the fight for equity and equality. What is that? What is that unique role that you serve in the business side and in the boardrooms and the corporate areas of our country?
Well, the vast majority of our board members represent companies in Hampton Roads from Centera. I'm the executive at Town Bank. We've got representatives from Fulton Bank. We've got independent business owners. So I think that gives us the opportunity to carry a message between divergent parties and find that common ground.
Wow. And the work that you've done, you just didn't start overnight. You guys have been operating and making strides and really making a difference for how many years?
I guess close to 40 years now. I know this MLK event is our 37th MLK event. It's typically at breakfast. Last year, pre-pandemic, we had over 800 guests.
Wow.
And so this year will be virtual. And it's also one of our largest fundraisers. So I guess I would like to put in a shameless or not so shameless plug. This year it's free. It's a virtual event that you can go to www.uhlr.com, and there's a link there to register for the event. That's all that's necessary.
Yes.
There's a fee to register, although I must say that donations are accepted and sponsorships.
Now, I want to go back to this because this is something that just isn't a get-together where you just laugh and talk, but it's something very important that the community looks forward to every single year. So this annual MLK Community Leaders event is where the focus this year, the theme is facing forward for our future. And as I stated before, this is just not somewhere where you just sit around and you talk and you have coffee, but it serves a very important function, and you have so many people that attend. How many persons would usually attend this event if it's not held virtually this year?
Last year, I think there were over 800.
Wow.
And so it's usually between 600 and 1,000. So
wow.
It is the premier MLK event in the Hampton Roads. And what we do by nominating these community leaders, it's an opportunity to recognize those people that are doing the hard work.
That's right.
And so there are 8 awards, and but they're going to be more than 8 honorees, which is a little different because one of the honorees is the Jones family. That's Judge Gerald Jones and his wife, and recognizing their families' efforts in Hampton Roads, going back to his father, who was very active politically, and actually his mother, who was a very well-known educator.
Yes, yes. And not just Judge Jones and his family, but you also have a diverse group of individuals that you recognize and honor for their work for this equity and equality in business and education. Who are some of the other individuals that you are recognizing this year? Okay,
recognizing youth, we have a rising leader. It's a gentleman by the name of Isaiah Mariner at Churchton High School. Education, the Honorable Jim Dyke, former Virginia Secretary of Education.
Who's also a board member here at Norfolk State University.
Alrighty. And Jonathan Zerb, President and CEO of the Virginia Center for Inclusive Communities. Dr. Jordan Asher, who's the Chief Physician Executive at Centura Healthcare. Mark Johnson, Vice President and Community Development Manager at Truist Bank. Dick Berry, who's the co-founder of the Berry Art Museum at Old Dominion University, a well-known philanthropist in the area. And Dr. Angela Reddix, President and CEO of ARDX. As I mentioned, for social justice is Judge Jones, his wife, Judge Simmons, and his son, Delegate Jay Jones.
Yes. And by honoring these individuals, you're not just giving out awards just to give it, but these are individuals that have made contributions to the efforts of the Urban League.
Absolutely. As I like to say, they've done the hard work. They've
Right.
done the heavy lifting, and this is our opportunity to thank them publicly.
That is. Which Hastings, the Urban League of Hampton Roads, like I said, it's been a very important fabric within our community for years, for decades. The work that you and the staff, and I like the fact that you recognize the staff, because just like in any successful corporation, any successful venture, university here like NSU or WNSB, our radio station, it's just not one person, it's a team, right? And recognizing those individuals and recognizing not just the people that are on staff, but those in the community that are partnering with you to move the needle toward a better America, toward equity, equality, to ensure that we all have an opportunity at the American dream. Mr. Hasty, do you have any final words for our listeners?
Sure. I look forward to everybody registering and joining us tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. for our virtual event. And everyone who registers will be entered to win a gift basket for $100 in case we need incentive.
Well,
also, folks to get an Urban League membership. Come on and join us.
That's it. And again, I want to give that information where you can register, www.ulhr.org. That's www.ulhr.org, which stands for Urban League of Hampton Roads. It's a virtual event. It's the first time that this event is held virtually because of the pandemic that we're in, and we're hoping and praying and doing our part to ensure that this is the last time it'll be all virtual, because this time next year, we believe it we'll be back together, right?
I missed my breakfast.
That's right. You have to listen. This year, you have to give your own breakfast, right? And your own coffee and juice. But again, go to www.ulhr.org. Register for this event. A lot of hard work went into it. I saw some of the production itself just by my own eyes, and there's a great team that's worked to put this together. They spared no cost, and the volunteers and the labor that went into it is going to be absolutely phenomenal. And while you're there, pick up a membership with the Urban League of Hampton Roads if you're not already a member. And also, as Mr. Hasty said, if you want to donate, feel free to donate. So again, Mr. Hasty, thank you so much for joining us here on State of the Water. And thank you and the Urban League of Hampton Roads for all the work that you do to help us move the needle toward equity and equality.
Thank you.
All right. God bless.
God bless.
You know, again, as we stated, we move over and we ask ourselves, you know, what are the things that we can do to move the needle forward? And we have, it's just not us as individuals, but we have organizations that have been working tirelessly, continuing, pushing for equity, for equality, and for the opportunity. And we talk about opportunity because opportunity is very important. You know, you never, ever want to cut anyone off from the opportunity to actually have to create their own. You know, this is America. God's given us great gifts. God's given us great opportunity here in this country. And it's up to us to ensure that everyone can work together and work toward their American dream. You know, but, you know, like I said, we will be celebrating Dr. King's 92nd birthday if he lived today. If he lived. And it seemed like the things that we were fighting during that time period, we're still fighting today. I mean, that is absolutely amazing. You know, but as we scratch our heads and look at the events of last week and the events of the last 4 years, you know, it's almost baffling. But it takes action. It takes action in the public policy forum. It takes action on the street. And to help us to understand this, and we want to recognize another organization that's doing this, it's called Brown Virginia. And with Brown Virginia, we have Jewel Jordan, who is one of the co-founders and organizers of Brown Virginia. Jewel, welcome to State of the Water.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, listen, thank you so much for being with us on the eve that we celebrate the birthday and the life and the work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Yes, absolutely.
Tell us a little bit about Brown Virginia. What was the process and the thought in founding it, and what do you actually do in the community to have an impact?
Absolutely. So Brown Virginia was founded by Jasper Hendricks III, who is a proud graduate at Norfolk State,
yes,
as well as I am.
Behold.
There we go. And so he started it about 5-6 years ago, because he saw that there was missing in the news a cycle of this is so important for Black and brown communities. So he really started off almost like a blog, where he would take and pull articles that would come out and highlight it to the Black and brown community. Uh-huh. And then one day he said, you know what, how about we take it a step further? How about we now bring the General Assembly to our network and to our community so they can have that one-on-one conversation? Because a lot of times there isn't complacency. I think people say, oh, they just don't know what to do, da, da, da. It's that it's kind of intimidating
Yeah.
They have to talk to a state senator and a delegate. And the thing is, yes, you get to talk to them. They are your representative. And so we wanted to bring about an event that would connect not just our community to them, but them to us, so they will come in and hear what we have to say, what's important to us and what's going on with legislation. And so from that point on, every year on Dr. King's holiday, we've held this event because we know that Dr. King was very passionate, and we call it a day on, not a day off, about actually, getting out there and being vocal and active in the community in regards to our issues. And so that's what we have. Our event has actually grown to where, was just elected officials will come and speak. And now we will have you on an activist panel.
Yes,
so
right.
People can say, all right, now we've listened to everybody. We hear what they've had to say. Let's organize.
Right.
And we want to teach people how to organize.
Wonderful. I want to point out a couple of things that you stated, which I think are very important. Number one, you said that the holiday that we receive, the day that we recognize the birth of Dr. King, is not a day off, but rather a day on.
Right.
And I know that across the country, we have designated that as a day of service to give honor to the work, the selfless work that he did.
Right.
And when we look at Dr. King and the selfless work that he did, I mean, he basically, at that age, and of being an educated African-American male, and he could have had the pickings of a very good life, a comfortable life. But he chose to get in and serve those who didn't have a voice.
Right.
And he became the voice for the voiceless, along with many, many others. But we understand that he holds a significant part and position in this work that we do. And in Brown, Virginia, is kind of funny because I tell my students that the power of an idea, right?
Right.
Follow your passions. Follow your passion. If you follow your passion, don't follow the money, because if you follow your passion and your desire, the money will come and the fame and all that stuff, if that's what you desire. So it shows how this simple idea, the power of an idea, in following the passion that you and Jasper had, who is also a good friend of mine, by the way, has come to be really the major day of action and advocacy for African Americans in the state capitol.
Yes, absolutely. We have over almost 30 speakers lined up. It's not over 30 speakers. Literally today, I just checked my email before I got up here, and we have elected officials who are still asking to get on the schedule.
Wow.
So I think word got around.
Wow. Now, usually you have individuals that you're asking, right? So a person like, can you come? And, usually you get a constituent letter that says, thank you for contacting us. But the difference here is that you have elected officials contacting you.
Yeah,
which,
absolutely.
And that speaks volume, because that shows that the impact that you're making, right?
Right. Absolutely, because we're not even just like allowing them. Of course, they come in to speak, but what we want people to do is take everything they've heard and take it back to their community. We want them to go back and say, "Look, I was on this event, and this is what so and so said, and our rep said this." So it's getting that seed and planting it, and now we want to help grow, and now we want to help water it, so that we really want to raise, community activists and community organizers.
Right.
It's on us. This is our government. So we want to educate you on how it works, because we know historically they kind of don't want us to know how it works.
That's right. Ms. Jordan, can you tell us some of the priorities? We just spoke with one of our brothers who is the chairman of the Urban League of Hampton Roads, and we know the Urban League fights for strides in the business community and education in corporate America. What are some of the advocacy priorities of Brown, Virginia?
What we really do is we amplify the legislation of our partners. So, for example, the big thing this year is legalization. And we have Marijuana Justice on with us tomorrow. They will have their own breakout session where people can speak directly with them. The reason that we're pushing behind Marijuana Justice is because they aren't just for making it legal. They want to make it legal correctly. They want to do it the right way, and they want to make sure that equity is involved. We cannot sit here and legalize marijuana without recognizing the impact that those drug laws have had on our community, and still have. So we also have Rise for Youth. They are juvenile justice reform. we have these literally correctional facilities with teenagers in there, and they just aren't getting the needed help and assistance. And so that's the Rise for Youth.
Wow.
And then we have, because we're all over the place, but so we have Veterans Affairs. We have an organization called Arm in Arm, and we have another young man, Michael Sagan, who will have a session with Secretary Carlos Hopkins. A lot of our family, Brown Virginia family, that's what I call them, are veterans. And sometimes being an African-American veteran, you're unfortunately left out of the loop of what's available. And so we're going to make sure people know about that. So we really amplify the legislation of our partners and what they do. This summer, there was a summer session where they did a lot of criminal justice reform. One of those big deals was the Civilian Oversight Board. Basically, civilians get to police the police. And that's something that now we have permission to raise in every city and town. But some cities and towns don't even know it's an option.
Right.
So we're going to have Legal Aid Justice Center with Johanse Whitaker, and he will show you the steps to make a civilian oversight board in your own town.
Wow. That is phenomenal.
Thanks so much.
You know, is one. Well, no, I mean, just in a short period of time, the impact that you're having in the advocacy and the public policy of our state and our great Commonwealth is tremendous. And, you know, we talk about how, you know, activism is good. It definitely raises the alarm. It gives individuals and put them on notice that something is afoot and things are not right in the community. But the follow-up to the advocacy is the policy.
Yes.
And I see that's where Brown Virginia is making the impact in addressing these very, very timely, not just historical, because you deal with criminal justice reform, you deal with educational equity and the like, and expanding voting. But over time, you look at the issues that are timely, that will impact us over time. Tell us about the issue of redistricting and how Brown Virginia is working to impact.
Yes. So we know that Amendment 1 passed this November for a redistricting committee to come together and redraw the lines in Virginia. And so when I say redraw the lines, we're talking about the voting lines. So, like, everyone lives in the district, and you might have a neighbor, sometimes how the lines are drawn, who has a different city councilman that you have because of the districts. We want it to be redrawn fairly because in the past they've drawn it, and this is nationwide, so that it will benefit a certain political party. Or unfortunately, you know, we want it redone, and the way that they committed and wrote the amendment that passed now has us with a committee where the 8 civilians that are on the committee is 8 civilians and 8 elected officials. The 8 civilians make over $100,000.
Wow.
This is supposed to be civilians who represent Virginia. That's not representative of Virginia. So this is a very good lesson because it's already passed. You know, we tried to fight the fight. We tried to make the example of, you know, hey, this isn't the best way, but here it is. So now what do we do now that it's here?
Right.
We stay on them. We hold them accountable, you know, and that's what you have to do. Sometimes you don't win, but that doesn't mean that you just let it go. It just means now that you make sure that they know you have all eyes on them and that you will be holding them accountable. So hopefully those lines and everything will get redrawn. It will come this year. And so we're not sure if we're going to get the census information in time because the current administration had issues when it comes to the census. And so that's what they're really waiting on right now to get those numbers. And that will determine actually whether or not we hold 2 primaries for Democrats this year. That's something I would like to bring up as well. So we're going to have our state primary in June, which we usually do, and we might have another one. There might be a state primary in March, but we might have 2 because of that. So that's where we are redistricting. It's happening. It is happening. Not too pleased with the outcome of the civilian part. However, we're just going to stay, hold them accountable and make sure that we spread the word to our Brown, Virginia family so they will know what's going on as well.
Right. And you mentioned redistricting, and I brought it up, and that's an issue that we're going to deal with here on State of the Water in our future shows, because this is the way that we vote. And if you want to pretty much, I'm not going to say cause trouble, bad trouble, and really thwart the gains made by citizens, especially African Americans and disenfranchised voters in these last elections, redrawing the lines is the way to do it.
Right.
And what goes on behind the scenes with this commission is going to be very important, because the significance of it is that no more do you have the ability to go through the legislature and then to the governor and then challenge in the courts. But now the only option is that just challenge in the courts. But that's after the damage has been done.
Right.
And so that's where the devil is in the details of policy and the like. So Jewel, if you could, because we have a few moments left. Usually Advocacy Day is held in Richmond. Is held in the governmental building, and the speakers then come. And the governmental building we're talking about is the Patrick Henry building. Yep. That's between the old General Assembly house where they're housed and the governor's mansion, right?
Yeah, it's right there beside the governor's mansion. Yep.
But this year, again, because of the pandemic, we are virtual. So tell us about the virtual setting and give us a few people who are going to be speaking on tomorrow.
Absolutely. So we are using the software and the website Hopin. It's important to say because it's kind of different from Zoom. And we've been getting used to Zoom all year, right, with COVID. So we're asking people to please go to brownva.org, click events, and you'll see the 5th annual Dr. King Day. Register there so you will get sent the link to register via Hopin, and you will be able to participate with everything we have to offer. If you register through Hopin, you will not only get the speakers and the main stage, we are also going to have a virtual exhibition hall where we have the likes of the League Conservation Voters, U Artistry Collaborative, which is a program that takes activism and art and combines it. And you can walk around like a regular convention center. You can click on different virtual booths and speak to those individuals. On our main stage, opening us up for the event at 9:05 is Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax. After him, we have a slew of delegates from all over. This morning, I just confirmed with Portsmouth Delegate Don Scott. We have Senator Jennifer McClellan, who is one of the black women who's actually running for governor this year. Then we will have our governor, Ralph Northam, who will come on around 11 o'clock. And then we have his administration. And that's what I'm really excited about. It's a lot of people coming in for the administration. Secretary of Education will be there, Secretary of Commonwealth. But we have Secretary of Department of Homeland Security and Public Safety, Brian Moran. Brian Moran is the one that is responsible for Virginia State Police. Brian Moran is the one that's in charge of our correctional facilities. He is the one that is in charge when the hurricane hit. His office is so very powerful, has his hand in everything.
Well, Joel, listen, that is a phenomenal list. It's www.brownva.org, www.brownva.org. Thank you so much for being on State of the Water.
Thank you for having me.
And I look forward to joining you guys tomorrow as well.
Yes, thank you. All right, bye, everyone.
All right, God bless. Well, that's it. So we've got two phenomenal events here in the community, both with the Urban League of Hampton Roads and also with Brown, Virginia. So we ask all of you to tune in, but stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment from our commercial break to deal with the aftermath of the insurrection.
Blazing Hot 91 in partnership with the Ice for Life Foundation and the Hope Foundation presents Hope for the Homeless. We are soliciting item donations like blankets, deodorant, disposable razors, feminine hygiene products, hand lotion, soap, toilet paper, toothpaste, toothbrushes, wipes, and gloves to build care packages for the homeless throughout the month of January. Hope for the Homeless. Your donated items can be dropped off at Dance Dimensions, 415 North Military Highway in Norfolk between 5 p.m. and 8 p.m. p.m. Monday through Friday, or anytime throughout January at 1133 Geranium Crescent, Virginia Beach, 23453. Help us to give hope for the homeless.
Blazing Hot 91 supports the Hampton Roads community. If you are a 501c3 charity or nonprofit organization and you're actively working on an initiative, we want to hear from you. Email your flyer with detailed information to wnsbradio@gmail.com. Please allow 2 to 3 weeks advance notice. Support is based on availability. Blazing Hot 91 supports the Hampton Roads community.
Welcome back to Stay in the Water. I'm your host, award-winning Dr. Eric Claville. And you've joined us this Sunday as we talk about MLK Day and the aftermath of the insurrection. And for those of you guys that joined us in the first half hour, we spoke with representatives from the Urban League of Hampton Roads to talk about their MLK Day 37th annual community event. And also, we spoke with the co-founder and organizer of Brown, Virginia, a new impactful advocacy and also an event and group that has organized an advocacy day on the Capitol. So you can join both of those events virtually. Simply go to their websites, www.ulhr.org and www.brownva.org to register free for those events. As we look back upon the life, upon the birth, upon the work, and the selfless work and the impact that Dr. Martin Luther King had upon our community and upon the world, we ask ourselves, how far have we come, but where do we go now? And the last week, we had some events that took place in our country that we haven't seen since 1861. And we're talking about the insurrection on the Capitol, the violent mob. But we want to hear from you. 757-823-9110. That's 757-823-9110. This is a time in the program where we want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear from you to find out what were you feeling during that time period that you were seeing angry white supremacists with Confederate flags, individuals that had weapons, individuals that had Trump flags, that were hitting our Capitol Police, that but they were outnumbered after we knew that this was coming. Going into the Capitol with zip ties, saying that where are they counting the votes, trying to find out what's going on in order to disrupt the peaceful transfer of power. You know, we talked about your initial reaction, but this week we want to take a look at the aftermath. There are many reports that are coming out that are speaking to what took place, how it took place, how the response was the failed response to it. And also, what can we do now? And keep in mind, we have the inauguration of President Biden and Vice President-elect Harris coming up this Wednesday. We're going to talk about it live on air for a few moments, and then we're going to come back on next Sunday, and we'll talk more about the show itself, the inauguration, and what are the hopes and the aspirations. What were your thoughts? But now I want us to look at what took place now that the smoke is cleared, proverbially and literally, and see what were the failures. But I want to hear from you, 757-823-9110, 757-823-9110. Now, please be patient. We have a lot of calls that are coming through, and we're going to get to you. But everybody that calls, we want to hear what you have to say. But the day of the event taking place, and keep in mind, I hold our capital, I revere our country in a very special place. And I hold it high in esteem because this is my country. I hold it in high esteem because my ancestors helped to build this country. I hold it in high esteem because this is the country where I have the opportunity to live out my dreams, the opportunity to contribute to the greater and the betterment of society and humanity, and also the world. I hold the Capitol in high esteem because it is the beacon of light and the place where we hold democracy, the founding of democracy for the rest of the world. I hold it in high esteem because I've had the privilege of going into the Capitol, on many occasions of being invited, of going into places that only you being invited by a member of Congress could go. I hold it in high esteem because our hopes, our dreams and aspirations to form a better society eventually has to come to that place to be recognized, laws to be passed, and eventually to be etched in the stone of the records of the Capitol of our Congress to live on forever. So when I saw these violent individuals, people that we call citizens, fellow citizens, turn into domestic terrorists, storming the Capitol, being incited by a president to march from the White House, which is not a short walk, by the way, from the White House to the U.S. Capitol itself, then to berate, to beat, to bludgeon, and kill law enforcement, to go in, to steal, to destroy property, and have some have the desire to capture and to assassinate elected officials. All based upon a lie, all based upon fallacies. The fallacy of white supremacy and the lie that the election was stolen. As we look back in history, this is not anything unusual. After slaves were freed and became citizens and given the right to vote, if you remember, history showed us where you had individuals with the same beliefs that black people's votes and others that were disenfranchised should not count in order to elect individuals that would create and pass policy that would also include them and help them, thereby helping our country, should not be cast. So you had violent lynch mobs that would terrorize people from going to the polls. Going to go vote wasn't as easy back then as it is today. You know, you get bottles of water. In Atlanta and other places, you get to go inside where NBA and NFL teams play. You know, you get all these rallies. But back then, people voted and they may not would come back. Going to register to vote, you may be killed. Medgar Evers in Mississippi, part of the NAACP, registering people to vote, they were killed. The 3 civil rights workers, Cheney, Schwarmer, they were killed in Mississippi trying to register people to vote. Grandfather clauses, poll taxes, literacy tests, guess how many jelly beans in the jar, foolishness, all just to vote. Because they understand that the power to vote is the power to change the course of our lives, not now, but for generation and the trajectory of our country. That's why the vote is so important. That's why the vote is the single most important, nonviolent, and effective tool against the fallacy of supremacy that believes that some should have and others should not. So that's what those individuals that stormed the Capitol were fighting against, because they understood. That's when President Trump came into power. That's when the Voting Rights Act itself was being decimated in Congress and also in the courts. That's when you saw the changing of various voting districts in North Carolina. That's when you saw legislators here in the Commonwealth of Virginia making it harder to vote. That's when you saw in Texas, the legislature there were targeting individuals in communities that were black, that were brown, because they didn't want their vote to count. That's when you saw the Fourth Circuit Court say that what was taking place in the state legislature was laser focus upon disenfranchising African-American votes, because they understand the power of the vote. Now, holding our elected officials accountable and our public policy individuals in public policy accountable as Brown, Virginia talked about, as the Urban League of Hampton Roads talked about. That's where we as citizens have the right to push forward, right? But getting our individuals, public officials in office, galvanizing the vote, that's where the fight begins. That's why it's so important, the redistricting. And we're not going to talk about it now, but we will be talking about redistricting in the future shows, because that's a very important part of how we vote, how many people can vote, how votes are diluted, or votes are actually emboldened by the lines that are drawn. Okay? So we'll talk about packing, we'll talk about dilution, we'll talk about the redrawing of the lines moving forward. But we want to hear from you. 757-823-9110. 757-823-9110. What were your thoughts about the insurrection on the Capitol? What are your thoughts about the aftermath of it? What are your thoughts about the president being held accountable and being impeached again for a second time? What do you think about others? They found that some U.S. congresspersons and policymakers were complicit in almost assisting these individuals in helping them to storm the Capitol. Were they complicit? Should they be held accountable? 757-823-9110. So now Nancy Pelosi and the House leadership, they've appointed retired Lieutenant General Honore, who was an alum of my alma mater, Southern University, who also oversaw the recovery, Hurricane Katrina, and also Rita in Louisiana. He's going to do an investigation of the Capitol security. Where were the faults? Why individuals were not able to get the support that they needed? Where were the failures? So that's his task. But the real issue, I believe, is investigating the chatter in online, what we call the black market, right? The black web, the dark web, where individuals are sowing these messages of division, of death, of violence, and how they operated in wanting to overtake the Capitol and seize the Capitol. That's where I believe where the majority of these issues, we're going to find out what's what. Currently, you have the press secretary for the new Congresswoman sworn in out of Colorado. If you notice, this is a Congresswoman who has a commercial where she's loading her Glock, packing, walking the streets of D.C. in the commercial and going into the Capitol with a Glock 9. Come on. Really? Do you need a Glock 9 in the U.S. Capitol? I mean, obviously, after what took place, you may. But before then, do you really need it? But she just resigned from the new Congresswoman's office less than 2 weeks after taking the oath, because she came in saying that she was going to speak against and go against the Electoral College and the Joe Biden win. She also said that she's a supporter of the QA9, which is a dark web conspiracy group of individuals that believe that Democrats and individuals who are Jewish and African Americans and others are destroying our country and the world, and a cabal and all these conspiracy theories. I'm not going to get into that because I don't want to give any airplay to things that are unproven. Bring evidence and maybe we can talk about it. But just to have these hateful conspiracies that fuel division, I believe is not productive. But I also think that what we are seeing today, like I said, the fight against people to vote, we've seen that before. It happened immediately after the Civil War. But I think 2021 is 1861 all over again. 1861 was the year in which the Civil War started. 1861 was when the first shot was fired in Fort Sumter, South Carolina. But many things led up to that before those shots were fired. You had the Dred Scott decision, which stated there are no rights that any black man has that any white man is bound to respect. That, according to many constitutional law scholars, including myself, I teach constitutional law and taught constitutional law and civil rights, I believe is the worst decision by the U.S. Supreme Court. One of the worst. We've had several. Plessy versus Ferguson is one. And we have several others that I believe are just absolutely horrid when you take a look at it. And it's funny how most of these decisions that are the worst all surround the rights of African Americans and the desire of white America not wanting African Americans to have those rights. So this struggle continues. But in 1861, our country was torn apart. We had the assassination of Abraham Lincoln by John Wilkes Booth, who also had ties and ideology to white supremacy, not wanting African Americans to have citizenship and full gain in our nation. We also had African American legislators that were coming in after the Civil War that wanted to reconstruct our nation. So we had a treacherous time after the Civil War of Jim Crow. But I believe what we're seeing now is the start of a new Civil War. Now, well, I say that because I look at what took place 8 years leading up to the 4 years of President Trump. 8 years leading up to the 4 years, we had President Barack Obama. We had conspiracies. We had people believing that he wasn't born in this country. He had to produce his own birth certificate. Think about that. A black man in the highest office of the land had to produce his own birth certificate to prove to people that he was born in this country. And they still wouldn't accept him. Not only that, but he wanted to work across the aisle to create health care for everybody. But they still didn't want to work with him or accept him. As a matter of fact, they ran 8 years on repeal and replace. And when they finally had the White House and also Congress and the Supreme Court, they said, we're not going to deal with that. We don't want to deal with it anymore. So in effect, the Affordable Health Care Act, Obamacare, which is still in effect, was something that was good, but they didn't want to admit it. If it wasn't good, they would repeal it and replace it. But in the very beginning of Donald Trump's presidency, they said they would. Not only that, but you also had Gabby Gifford, who was shot in the head, Congresswoman out of Arizona, whose husband, former astronaut, now is the rightfully elected U.S. Senator out of Arizona. Not only that, but we also had the killing of the African-American church, AME Church in South Carolina. I believe that was the shot. They murdered, again, a white supremacist murdered church-going people that love the Lord, people that invited him in. And he sat there through Bible study and killed and murdered those people. But then after that, we had Charlottesville, Unite the Right March. Individuals in our own home state that said, death to all blacks and Jews. All right? This is our country. Where you had former Grand Wizards of the Ku Klux Klan, David Duke, come and greet the individuals. You also had the killing of a young white female who was there saying that, no, this is wrong. And the injuring of 17 others when an angry white male ran his car into a group of demonstrators. And then you had the burning of 5 African-American churches in South Louisiana by the son of a deputy who also espoused this rhetoric of white supremacy. Before that, you had the killing and an assassination of members who were attending a Jewish synagogue in Pittsburgh, again, because of this far-right extremism. But still, domestic terrorism and white supremacy groups or acting upon those is not a federal crime. It's not. Why is that? Why can we not punish these individuals under the law who act upon these false beliefs, these hateful beliefs, and takes individual lives? This is a question that we got to ask ourselves. This is a question that we have to move forward in the aftermath of the insurrection. 757-823-9110. 757-823-9110. In the last 10 minutes of the show, if we want to hear from you, what are your thoughts on the aftermath of the insurrection? What do you think should happen? Should the president be held accountable? Should those who acted violently be held accountable? And why were they able to come in and act violently and leave without any handcuffs, leave without anyone being shot and killed, leave without anyone? Now, we did have someone shot and killed, a lady who tried to go into an area and the police killed her, said, do not come in here, an area where the members were. But for the vast majority, no one was arrested. No one was charged while they were there. Now, the FBI has started to go after them. But while they were there, police held their restraint. There were no National Guardsmen there like it was for Black Lives Matter. The double standard was on full display. So if anyone says that there is no racial double standard, obviously you were asleep the last 9 months. And can you believe that all of this has happened in less than 12 months? The killing of George Floyd, the killing of Breonna Sanders, the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, the false accusation of the black man in New York, the false accusation of the young black teenager in New York of stealing a cell phone, and many, many other. All this, and then the insurrection. All this has happened in less than 12 months. I don't know. I'm scratching my head. I'm saying, can we take any more? But I'm confident to know that God said that he would not put more on us than we're able to bear. But that doesn't mean that you don't have to go through. So let's take a look at what the FBI is doing now. Right now, they've arrested over 170 people. They've indicted over 100, and more arrests are coming. But there are also reports that show that they actually took a large amount, a disturbing amount of guns off of people at the rally. That report hit today. You can go to thehill.com, thehill.com. It's a news reporting of all news on the Hill. It reports about politics in general, but also reports about the House, the Senate, Supreme Court, the White House, and other aspects of government. But it showed that they took a large amount of guns off of people there, disturbing amount. Also, there were pipe bombs at the RNC and DNC. This shows that these people were after every single body that wasn't supporting their hero, soon to be ex-President Trump. It also shows that just as yesterday, a man from Virginia created fake credentials to get past all of the security in the Capitol. He had 2 Glock 9s on him and 500 rounds of ammunition. Now, I don't know about you, but there are 535 members of Congress. And I think you don't go to a place like that. You just don't go to a place like that with 500 rounds of ammunition that have almost 25,000 National Guardsmen, Capitol Police, DC Police, Secret Service, FBI, and think that you're just going to come there and walk away. This is very disturbing. But we knew it was hiding in plain sight. Another report shows that Christopher Wray, who is the director of FBI, had a report ready to go, but was held back by the DOJ, Attorney General William Barr, at the behest of the White House, President Trump, that showed that white supremacist groups, white extremists, was the most dangerous threat to domestic tranquility to our country. They were the number one threat, and still are to this day. We see it. to the domestic tranquility of our country. That shows us that this is a very serious problem. But now we see it. We see it in plain sight. Now that the reports are coming out, showing us that these are not good things. But we know that we can overcome it if we acknowledge it. Because one thing that we do know is that white supremacy is the greatest threat to democracy, because democracy is the greatest threat to white supremacy. I'll say that again. Extremism, white supremacy, individuals want to go after and destroy our government, is the greatest threat to our democracy, because democracy is the greatest threat to those individuals. That means when the greater public is engaged, that means that when we operate through the system that has been provided to us, through our laws, through our public policy, through our Constitution, that means when everyone has an equal and equitable opportunity to participate, when we have individuals who are informed with the facts, the truth, when we have a voting electorate that's given the opportunity to vote no matter what your economic status, no matter what your social status, no matter what your health status, no matter your belief, when we have all of these aspects working in society, our democracy works. That's what we in America show the rest of the world. That's what's good about our country. I didn't say perfect. I said that's what's good about our country. What's bad about our country is when we have one man or one person that believes that they can do whatever they want to do without being held accountable. And that's why President Trump was impeached twice. And rightfully so. The actions of this past president, as it relates to the office of the president, has been atrocious. But we have a new day. And the new day is coming on Wednesday, where we have the inauguration of President-elect and Vice President-elect Harris and President-elect Joe Biden. Our hopes, our dreams, our aspirations rest upon the new administration. But we just can't depend upon those individuals alone. We have to stay engaged. We have to hold individuals accountable. And we, too, have to be educated about the issues. And that's what we do here at Save the Water. We inform you, the public, the community, bring movers and shakers and policymakers to discuss issues that impact you. And we want you to enjoy your MLK Day on Monday. Go to the virtual MLK celebrations for the Urban League of Hampton Roads and Brown, Virginia. And we will see you back next week at 1 o'clock. God bless.